Hey, Susan here, and welcome to this episode of the Menopause Health Podcast. And in this, I just want to go, there. My guest today, we talk about symptoms, and some of which I didn't even attribute to perimenopause when I was going through it. And I was blown away. So we're going to talk about perimenopause. We're going to talk about menopause. We're going to talk about, are you actually possibly experiencing some perimenopause symptoms that you're not attributing to this stage of your life? And as I said, I know some of you are all serious and you're like, what is she even talking about? Like, just listen to the episode. You will be blown away. So my guest today is a nurse practitioner based out of Ontario, Canada. She is certified by the North American Menopause Society. So for this show, we are bringing you practitioners who are certified. They're experts in their field. They are all experienced with perimenopause and menopause. And that certification is very rigorous. And so if you want to know more, you can go to the North American Menopause Society website. It's now called the Menopause Society. And she is an advocate for women and really helping women find their power as they're navigating perimenopause and menopause. She is a mother of 2 grown boys. She's been married to her husband for 33 years. And here's a fun fact. We are both from the same small town in Ontario, Canada, Brockville. And the last time I saw her in person, there were a group of girls. We were all out together. My dad had just passed and they were just wrapping their arms around me in love. And I'm so grateful. And so it's my honor and privilege to share with you today's episode with the amazing Andrea Campbell.
Welcome to the Menopause Health Podcast, your go-to resource for practical advice brought to you by credentialed health professionals and industry experts. Here is your host, Susan Sly.
Well, hey everyone. I'm so excited you are here for this episode of the Menopause Health Podcast. And as I shared in the introduction, not only is Andrea Campbell certified by the North American Menopause Society, they are now called the Menopause Society, which is a very rigorous certification to get. She is a nurse practitioner. She is seeing women in perimenopause and menopause every single day. And we're going to debunk some myths. But before we jump into that, Andrea and I were last seen together in public at the, what is it called, Andrea? The Thousand Islands Brewing Co., which is this sort of gastro pub in Brockville, Ontario, where I grew up. Andrea and I know a bunch of the same girls, and we're out there, and my dad had just passed, and we're just, out with a group of friends, and we're talking about menopause. We're talking about vasomotor sympathy. I can't even, menopause brain fog. I can say whatever I want. We're talking about brain fog. We're talking about hot flashes. We are talking about everything under the sun. And I said to Andrea, I need to have you on the show so we can debunk some of the myths. So Andrea, I'm so excited that you're here. And I know we're not, at the Thousand Islands Brewing Co., but, we're here virtually. But thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you so much for asking me. I'm super excited and passionate to share so many things that women need to know. I'm very passionate about health, and especially women's health. It's always been an interest of mine. And this has just really brought it to the forefront of how much work we really need to do and how much assistance and empowerment that women need when it comes to this stage of life.
Well, Andrea, you're seeing patients every single day, and you have walked this journey. I mean, you're a mom, you're a wife, and kudos to you, sister. You've been married for over 3 decades, which in, today's marriages in dog years, it's like over 210 years. So way to go on that. But Share with everyone, what is your own menopause journey? Because many women have different, they experience menopause differently. What happened for you?
So I guess looking back on it, it was sort of, you would think in healthcare I'd be aware, but honestly, I was not super aware. I just thought, one day I'd wake up and I wouldn't really have my period. And I heard about all these other things that people have. And I thought, I don't have time to have those symptoms, so I'm not going to have them. And that'll be that. But then what happened was in my, I would say mid 40s, I started getting a lot of really disturbing night sweats. Very heavy periods. And I was also making a major lifestyle change, just sort of life caught up with me. And I gained a lot of weight and did not look after myself, looked after everybody else. And then I sort of continued sort of on a better health journey for myself and really paying attention to that, but I was still having symptoms. And then I had this very sort of busy, I don't know the word busy, but a very busy job, very sort of high profile job. And I was really trying to make this role work in a small community. And I started getting hot flashes when I was like in the middle of doing client assessments and family meetings and all these kinds of things. I thought, what is going on? And then it occurred to me that I was, 51 or something like that. Anyway. And then what happened to me is that I found work became more and more challenging, and I wasn't really aware of what was happening to me. I thought I couldn't keep up. I just felt like I couldn't do this job anymore. I was tired. I wasn't sleeping well, all those things. I was a little bit more irritable. And it seemed like what once multitasking was easy was no longer easy. And I just thought that I was a wash up, that I'd have to find a different career. Anyway, fast forward a little bit, I became more educated and realized that these things were a symptom of menopause. And I sort of started to institute a few different things in my nutrition that plus or minus can help some people. And then I started to give myself a little bit of grace and just started to take it a little bit more easy. But looking back on it, it was a really challenging time. And I'm on a mission now to help women understand that it's not always just them, that they're not that they're still able to do all of these things. It just has to have a different approach taken to it and look after their health. Mm-hmm.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for your transparency. My favorite thing was, I don't have time for menopause. Like, I love that. No, sorry, I don't have time for you. I'm swiping right, or swiping left. I don't even know. I've never been on a dating app in my life. So, but it's like, I'm just done. And this piece around the weight gain, and I was reading a statistic that said on average women will gain at least 4% of their existing body weight. So you just to do round numbers, so a woman who is 150 pounds is going to gain maybe 7.5 pounds, and that's there's a range. It's 4 to 5.5%. And then you also mentioned night sweats. So I had this man say to me, I was doing an interview, and this man said, well, my wife never went through menopause. And I said, I doubt it. I bet she did. And he said she didn't have night sweats. Well, night sweats, guess what, people? They aren't the only symptom that happen. Not everyone, I think it's 80% of women get the vasomotor symptoms, but 20% don't. And you mentioned getting, sweating during the day, getting those surges of heat. That happened to me too. And it wasn't just surges of heat, it was surges of anxiety. And there's more research sharing on that. I mean, it's I want to jump in, Andrea, and talk about this because there are women listening and men who love women who are listening, and they think, oh, I don't have night sweats, so I'm not in menopause. Like, I just need you to do a throwdown here and debunk that myth.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many, there's sort of the perimenopause. Well, there's different stages. We have our reproductive stage, we have puberty, we have our reproductive stage, and we have perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. So those are sort of it in a nutshell. So we're talking more about perimenopause. But we also have to realize that there's over 10 million females in Canada over the age of 40, which is a quarter of the population. So potentially those women could be in some stage of perimenopause, possibly menopause. But I think what's really important is that when you look at symptoms of perimenopause, in the literature, it'll say there's over 30 symptoms. Oh, there's way more than 30 symptoms. But what's most reported is probably over 30, like around 30 symptoms. But the symptoms can range from, you don't have to have, like you said, night sweats, which is hot flashes at night, or hot flashes during the day. Typically, most women will have some of those. The severity of them can be variable, but there's all kinds of other symptoms that they can have that really go unseen. Dizziness, you can get ringing in the ears or tinnitus. You can have joint pain that people think is just attributed to quote unquote aging or exercising too hard. We have multiple estrogen receptors in our muscles. You will often find women will develop a frozen shoulder, perimenopause, menopause stage, which is pretty common in women. There's some research on that, but there's stomach upset. People can get perspiration, palpitations, but all of these are not what everybody's going to get. Everybody is an individual, and their symptoms have to be looked at on an individual basis. I always say that if you have things that are changing, then you need to sort of identify that, do symptom tracking, and we can talk about different tools and things like that that help people determine what their specific issues are or concerns are. Itching skin is another one. It can develop early, late, mid, it can start, it can stop. It changes with the elasticity and collagen in our skin. You can get urinary tract infections can be increased. The vulvovaginal area, the epithelial layer becomes drier. People can have painful intercourse, low libido, just generalized discomfort. These are things that aren't talked about a lot. More we're doing this, and hopefully women will, but there's all of these things that are sort of hidden that people walk around and don't discuss because they A, don't know where to discuss it, B, they're embarrassed, or C, they just don't know what's happening to themselves.
Okay, Andrea, you just demystified 12 years out of my life. The itchy skin. I would wake up so itchy, and then I'd go into the bathroom and I'd be putting on like lotion in the middle of the night. I had no idea. And you know what's so funny? Recently I was like, oh, my skin's not itchy anymore. Well, go figure. Then the frozen shoulder, Dr. Lisa Larkin, who president of the North American Menopause Society, she was talking about this at an event that we co-host at the Pause, the Femtech and Women's Health Summit in Phoenix. And she was talking about one day she just couldn't put her bag in the overhead bin. And as you're sharing all of these different, the tinnitus, the dizziness, most women would not associate this with perimenopause. And it's startling. And you said there are likely way more than 30 symptoms. Mm-hmm. And so for a woman listening right now, or a man listening who, has amazing women in his life, what is, like, if she's experiencing any of these, what is the first thing she should do?
I think the first thing she should do is book an appointment with somebody with a healthcare professional that she trusts to start the discussion. And also hopefully have an open conversation at home with their partner. And if that's uncomfortable, maybe talk with a really good friend and start to hash that out so that then they feel comfortable speaking with their partner. Because I think support is huge when you're feeling alone. And I have a statistic somewhere, there is a certain percentage of women feel so alone during the menopause journey. And that I'm sort of branching off, but feeling alone can lead to different emotional health issues, depression, etc., which can be exacerbated during this period of time, as well as anxiety. But then long-term depression that goes untreated, if you're not talking about it and feeling alone, can end up with longer-term cognitive effects later in life. So it's really important that people start to have the conversation and find somebody. If they can't talk to somebody at home or they don't know how to do it, go talk to their healthcare provider, because there's nothing that a healthcare provider hasn't heard that it will probably won't shock them. So it's like, it's sort of like when you go see a gynecologist, nothing will shock the gynecologist. It's sort of the same thing. Is it just to really feel open, and hopefully their healthcare provider will start the conversation. And there's tools to help start that conversation. People can write things down, and then you can look at the tool, and then you can discuss it, which really eases into talking about things like libido or vulvovaginal issues or feeling alone or depression, those sensitive items.
Absolutely. And there are a couple of pieces like this feeling of loneliness. And that is why we created the Pause app. So a woman has a 24/7 AI companion that has been vetted by health practitioners, physicians, sex therapists, mental health therapists to be able to, I use her myself. And I was flying into New York a few weeks ago, and I got to the hotel and I was just not feeling myself. I was exhausted. I'm not an anxious person. I was feeling anxious, and I started to have the conversation with her, and then she gave me a breathing exercise. And we created that app because we don't want women to feel alone. The other thing is determining a practitioner. I am going to be very direct and say not all practitioners are created equal. You did your North American Menopause Society certification. It is such a rigorous certification. Dr. Larkin said in North America alone, there are only 4,000 certified providers. That's Canada and the US. And yet 6,000 women are entering menopause every day in the US alone. And in the United States, it's 30,000 perimenopausal and menopausal women to one certified provider. And we have seen providers gaslight patients. We had one person, we were hosting cocktails and conversations, and her provider put her in a mental institution. She was going through perimenopause. And so I would say, go to someone who's certified, like Andrea. This is not the time that you should get the runaround because you're already struggling. We are also seeing an increased suicide rate, to your point about the depression for women in menopause. And this is the time where you go and see someone who has that certification.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important for women. And I know that on a previous discussions that you've had, but really looking at mental health, because it's often silent. You have so many high functioning women that suffer. So just like, feeling that anxiety come on, or feeling that depression, or feeling lower mood, or slight loss of interest in usual activities. These are all little signs, but many women just keep going and going and going. That's, like I said, I didn't have time for it. And what happens when we don't have time for it is that it'll rear its ugly head eventually. But when we also don't take time in just sort of backing up with what you said, it's a critical time in perimenopause and early menopause to have your bone health looked at, your cardiovascular health changes drastically. The markers will change, but your lifestyle has to change. But people don't have that frank conversation that this is what's happening. Here's some options. Let's work together. Let's get there. And there's not a lot of people that have that ability to do that for whatever reason. In healthcare is in this country, in North America, is pretty much in a deep crisis. So it's very challenging to find that. So you need to, like you say, you need to find people that are going to listen and help you, because there's a window of time where you can get specific treatment should that be appropriate. whether if it's menopause replacement therapy or hormone replacement therapy, if there's no contraindications, there's a window. And that window, the earlier that you catch that window, the better your health is for long term. And not that this is necessarily a menopause replacement therapy or hormone replacement therapy for everybody, but that's a discussion. And there's risk factors and rigorous sort of testing that has to go through. It's not like, here's a medicine you can get on the internet and feel better. You really need to have an in-depth holistic perspective so that you're getting whole person care and looking at also family systems and all of that. That's what I do. And I think most people that are doing this do look at the whole person, but we really need to be looking at bone health, cardiovascular health, emotional health, and then a lot of lifestyle stuff, but really working and setting small goals and empowering people to believe that they can make these changes and that they can feel better. It's absolutely possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And this is that we have to be optimistic, right? You can, and you and I know women who are doing an amazing job navigating menopause and perimenopause. So let's talk about this, because in today's show, we're debunking these myths. Okay. So there are stages. Perimenopause, how long can it last? What are you seeing in terms of age range where women are entering perimenopause?
So I've seen perimenopause as early as 38, but generally speaking, perimenopause can be sort of early mid 40s into early 50s. That's sort of the general age. So, and it may span, 4 years for some people, up to 6 to 8 years. And then you hit into, and that's natural perimenopause. That's not because of chemotherapy or surgery or premature ovarian failure. This is sort of like natural menopause age. And then menopause can hit average age of around 51 in Canada. There's some stats that say 52, but it's around there. And that menopause transition is basically, you're in actual menopause when you go 1 year without a menstrual cycle. It has to be 1 year to the day. It can't be a day less. You start all over again. Then you're still in perimenopause. And then you have sort of...
Oh, yay, you get to rewind. You did have a period for 364 days. It's like, yay.
Yeah, because that's the period of time where your cycles become irregular, and they can be shorter, longer, heavier bleeding. You can get 2 sort of menstrual cycles a month, sometimes more. There's a lot of things that can go on during that time. A lot of urinary symptoms, nighttime, having to pass your urine a lot or pee a lot, and the same thing at night. So women really do go through a lot during that time, and average is about 6 years from our Canadian statistics, and then menopause itself is, you have that sort of early stage, which is the first 1 or 2 years, and then late menopause is from there on in the rest of your life. So we spend at least 30 to 40 years in the post-menopause phase. And our life expectancy is around 83.6 years. So we have a lot of years to spend like that. And we want to feel vibrant and healthy. This period of time is super important because it's the rest of your health, our sort of like midlife health is the rest of the health for your rest of your life. I'm sorry I didn't say that right, but
no, it's perfect.
Long term, you really need to take this time seriously and put yourself first. And that's sort of the journey that maybe people can go on, is going, okay, well, I've looked after parents, I've got kids are getting somehow settled or off to school, whatever your situation is, and really trying to carve out that time for yourself. And if you're not used to it, like I wasn't, but I never prioritized myself and just being totally transparent. I didn't really prioritize myself, but it catches up with you. So like I said, I'm on a mission to teach women to prioritize themselves just a little bit so that you don't end up with chronic disease, long-term health issues.
Well, yeah, and it's that, put the oxygen mask on yourself first, right? Like we hear that term, we know the phrase, you're flying in the airplane, you're flying with a child, put the oxygen mask on yourself first. And so many women don't. And I want to talk about another myth. So let's talk about pregnancy, right? Because so many women are like, oh, I haven't had my period, I can't get pregnant. And
yeah, so in perimenopause and when the cycle variation, when your menstrual cycle is has a lot of variability to it, 25 over 25% of those cycles are ovulatory. So you just don't know. That's a lot, and so you need to have some sort of contraception backup because it's very possible to get pregnant. Especially those months when the follicle stimulating hormone decides to do this sort of weird thing, and then it releases another more egg down into the uterus, and it's like it's right there. So we still have all the right stuff to get pregnant. Yes, it may be harder, but it may not be. You just don't know. It's a gamble.
Yeah, it happened to a friend of mine. She was like, Susan, I think I'm in menopause. And then she called me 2 weeks later, Susan, guess what? I'm pregnant. And she's happy about it. It's all good. And I think that there are a lot of things, and I want to backtrack a bit to the periods, because this is a conversation a lot of women don't have with other women, and these heavy periods. And it's and getting really in, since this is the Menopause Health Podcast, I had periods for 2 weeks at a time, and I entered perimenopause at 38 after I had my last child. I thought it was just postpartum. For 12 years, I had night sweats, heavy periods. I mean, it just kept going on and on and on. I went to so many different providers, and I just couldn't handle it anymore. Not only was it embarrassing, I was always, just raw and real. I was always traveling with extra large pads, and I would, always have to bring a change of clothes. And, there were times on an airplane where I bled through my pants, bled through in meetings, having to run out. And it was bad enough that as a technologist, I was often the only woman in the room. Try giving a presentation, then suddenly you're bleeding through your pants. You're bleeding through your pants. You've got to run out. And these were the real things that happened. And I am absolutely unabashedly open to saying all of this, because it's not just me, Andrea. I've had so many conversations with other powerful women who are badasses in their fields, and this is happening. So I want you to please do a public service announcement. If a woman's been going through that, even just for a few months, let alone me suffering for 12 years, tell her what she needs to do, like right now.
Yeah. So heavy periods, they can be sort of a normal sort of symptom, but really they're not normal. If you're having heavy periods, you need to go see somebody and get that looked at. There could be some sort of issue going on in the uterus. There could not be, but possibly there could be. And we want to rule those things out. So you don't want to have a extra large fibroid or some sort of a benign tumor, or, goodness sakes, maybe not a benign tumor. Like, I'm not scaring people. I'm just saying, like, when you have this, get it checked out. It doesn't mean that there's something serious wrong, but things need to be ruled out. Not only that, you're depleting yourself of essential, for example, iron, those sorts of things, let alone the anxiety that it causes when you have to know where every, like I did a lot of outreach stuff. So I had to know where every washroom was in the back roads, like where is the public washroom? I had to plan my routes out. So sort of like what you were saying. And we think that it's normal, but it's not normal to have to suffer like that. There's a lot of things that can be done as long as everything else is ruled out. So you don't really have to go through life like that. And I just would encourage everybody to seek their healthcare provider's attention. And if they go to the appointment and they feel they're not getting answers, then they need to go see somebody else, because this is not, there's solutions for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish I had heard this podcast 12 years ago. It didn't exist because I suffered. And I did go to one doctor. He wasn't certified. He was doing a lot of hormones, but he's like, well, you should have a uterine ablation. I did not want to have the ablation. And I didn't know that I could actually, with the right hormone replacement therapy, that I didn't have to suffer like I was suffering. Some women have, that I know, have done IUDs, there are different ways to go. Could you talk about, for the women listening, and let's say this is something she is going through, there isn't just one solution. Could you talk about some of the different medical interventions?
Yeah, for sure. So, first of all, yes, you mentioned IUDs. That's appropriate for many people. If some people do go for oral contraceptives, depending on what stage they're at, that can be it can be a plus or minus depending where you're at. Sometimes the estrogen levels are too high in oral contraceptives. There is a possibility in perimenopause, again, ruling out any contraindications for any of these things, that hormone replacement or menopause replacement therapy is what they call is appropriate. There's different dosages and things like that can actually help with the vasomotor symptoms, which are the hot flashes and night sweats, along with so many other benefits with it. There are surgical procedures. There's imaging that can be done. People can go see gynecology. Like, there's all kinds of different things. If your healthcare provider can't manage everything, there's other people that can look at it, so that you have a sort of a toolkit of what the best option is. And then hopefully from that, you can decide and have really good follow-up. The fortune is in the follow-up when it comes to healthcare and women's health, because that's where you can see how people are feeling, how their symptoms gone. For example, in this is the bleeding slowed down. Plus there's other medications short-term to help slow down the bleeding a little bit. So I guess there's just a whole gamut of options, and it depends on each individual woman's situation and their health history.
Andrea, I love that you shared that, because I want the message always for the show is you're not alone. The show is all about education. It's all about empowerment. There's always more than one option. Right now, we're seeing in the United States, I believe it's less than 5% of women are electing to do hormone replacement therapy. And there are a variety of reasons. One is lack of knowledge. Number two is the research that some of the providers have is so outdated. It also, if someone has had cancer, it costs. There's a whole host of things, but you don't have to suffer. That is the bottom line.
No.
Andrea,
Absolutely.
the final question I have for you is that, we talked about perimenopause, we talked about symptoms, we talked about menopause, we're talking about stages. And I want to bring you back to something you said about learning how to prioritize yourself. And I'm going to quote Oprah. Oprah once said that prioritizing our health is not selfish. It is the most selfless thing we can do, because how are we supposed to be good partners, mothers, friends, daughters, sisters, women with our careers, if we're not healthy? And I'm going to give the final word to you. What do you want to say to the person listening who, like you were, had a hard time prioritizing herself and her health?
Well, I guess the bottom line is, me being a straight shooter, is that you only have this one life here. And if you want to be healthy going forward, for whatever it is that you have in your life that you look forward to or that you want to do in the future, that right now is all we have. And so we need to really take that time, whether it's half an hour a day, whether it's in 2 15-minute chunks, 4 10-minute chunks. I don't care what you do. But you really need to prioritize that and prioritize how you nourish your body and your mind, and really get some of that fitness going. I tell people when they haven't been moving regularly, just move. Just move, like do a couple squats, go for a 5-minute walk, start there, and then work up to it. And just really, really take that for yourself, for your physical health and your emotional health. It's absolutely necessary, because if you're no good to anybody and you feel like crap, you can't do what you want to do. And long-term, what I tell everybody, because inflammation is such a big word now, is that all these things help the inflammation, which then help curtail chronic disease. And we don't want chronic disease as we age. So now is the time that you absolutely have to look after yourself.
I love that. And figure out what you want to look forward to. Now is the time. Take those small steps, right? Because the body we have in our 80s is directly related to choices we're making in our 50s and 60s, right? And so, Andrea Campbell, firstly, I love you. Thank you for being here. Shout out to the Thousand Islands Brewing Co. I love their quinoa bowl, and I don't drink beer, so they have a great quinoa bowl. Local business. They didn't endorse our show. You never know what we're going to talk about, and I can't wait till our next face-to-face meetup and with our girlfriends in Brockville, so we can be talking about these issues and really spreading that message of empowerment. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It was such an honor to share all this information. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And to everyone who's listening, we just started the show. Spread the word, tag us on social. And if you haven't downloaded the Pause app, go to the App Store in iOS, download it right now. You will be able to gauge your stage. You'll have your 24/7 menopause companion. You'll have fun, gamification, lifestyle education. It is absolutely amazing. So with that, everyone, thanks again for listening to this episode of the Menopause Health Podcast, and I will see you in the next episode.
This Menopause Health Podcast is brought to you by the Pause Technologies. To find out more, visit thepause.ai and follow us on your favorite social media channels. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share the show, and connect with us. We will see you in the next episode.